Hello and welcome to the Deckbuilders buffet here at MTG Another Look. These card suggestion videos are like a buffet where you try a little of this, a little of that, and leave behind the cards that don't work for you. With that said, grab a plate and let's take another look at some commander cards that you might be missing out on. Let's talk about Yasharn Implacable Earth from Zendikar Rising. It's a 4/4 elemental boar for 2, a white, and a green. When Yasharn enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic forest card and a basic plains card, reveal those cards, put them in your hand, then shuffle. Players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. Yasharn is what I'd like to see stacks effects look like. It has a mild stacks effect that can save your bacon in certain situations, like playing against an aristocrats deck, but it's also got some just good stuff value stapled on as well. You don't have to play Yasharn because you're specifically metagaming against a certain archetype of decks. You can slot Yasharn into plenty of different decks because it's a 4/4 for 4 that puts 2 extra cards in your hand. Yasharn is never a useless card because even if the 3 players you're up against have 0 effects that require sacrifice or life payment, which is extremely unlikely, you still get an on-curve creature that smooths out your land drops for later turns. Yasharn turns off fetch lands because it requires life payment. Yasharn turns off necropotents. Yasharn can turn off sack outlets even if they're mana abilities like Phyrexian Altar. Some of the things that are incidentally turned off by Yasharn happen to be some of the best cards in the format. A lot of these cards can catch strays when you're just playing your big dumb 4/4 that searches up lands for you. Yasharn, however, does not prevent all sacrifices. It's not a Tajuru Preserver. It's not going to turn off forced sacrifice like what is on Living Death. It'll only turn off activated abilities that require sacrifice or life payment as part of the cost. Let's look at Liliana Dreadhorde General. If she uses her -4 ability, Yasharn will not stop that either. While the ability is an activated ability, the cost to activate the ability does not require sacrificing. The sacrificing is what you get for paying the cost of removing 4 loyalty counters from Liliana. That's why I referred to Yasharn as a mild stacks effect. It won't shut down entire decks, and the stacks effect doesn't prevent a wide swath of effects from working, but what it turns off can be highly relevant. While some people like to really lean into the stacks theme by putting it in decks like Gadok Teague, I think Yasharn can be a huge boon in lots of different decks just as a value piece. It fits great in a deck alongside Captain Sisay, which can take advantage of its nature as a legendary creature to be a tutorable stacks piece. You'll be able to find it just when you need it. It can also be played alongside landfall themes, or in Yuma Proud Protector, a deck that can be built to pull lands from graveyards and maybe wants extras in hand to discard for benefit. Yasharn will not turn off Yuma's land sacrificing ability as it's a triggered ability. Yasharn fits right in. Next, let's talk about Riversongs Diary from the Doctor Who Commander decks. It's an artifact with imprint. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards exiled with Riversongs Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Riversongs Diary is a very inexpensive card that plays a vital role in Spellslinger decks in off colors. It's an artifact, so it can be played in mono-red Spellslinger or mono-black Spellslinger, and provide extra casts of instants and sorceries for free each of your upkeeps once it's exiled 4 spells. Despite red being supposedly the second best Spellslinger color after blue, without blue support, your decks can run into a bit of a hurdle. It's a bit more difficult to create long-term, consistent value in red than you might think. Red does Storm extremely well, but if you want a slower, more resilient Spellslinger deck with consistent card advantage, you'll have to work a bit harder. Riversongs Diary can help you there. All the 1-for-1 spells like Chaos Warp, or the one-shot effects like Reckless Impulse, will be much better when you can cast them a second time for free. Riversongs Diary also has the benefit of being incidental graveyard hate against instants and sorceries. When an opponent casts one, you get to exile it as it resolves. All of their flashback or jumpstart spells like Radical Idea, or their plans of launching a big Mizzix's Mastery, will be incidentally disrupted. Keep in mind that your own graveyard synergies will be disrupted as well, so plan accordingly. However, for just 3 mana you get to snipe big impactful spells when your opponents cast them, and possibly get them for free later on. Being able to randomly take advantage of a Breach the Multiverse or a Blatant Thievery that aren't even in your deck can be a huge amount of card and mana advantage. anything you can pay 3 mana into and get consistent card advantage from after that point is surprisingly effective. I have Riversongs Diary in a Judith Carnage Connoisseur deck. I always maintain that Judith plays so much better as a traditional Spellslinger deck, making tokens and burning opponents, than as a board wipe tribal deck with her ability to give spells Death Touch. And Riversongs Diary, being able to cast or draw spells a second time, can give the deck the reach and longevity it can really use. The Diary can do good work in Toshiro Umezawa and give your mono-black deck the spell synergies that are uncommon in the color. It can also combine with Kellen the Kid to trigger his ability, even if it's with your opponent's spells, to be able to cast your permanents for free. Speaking of Spellslinger, Thunderclap Drake from the Thunder Junction Commander decks is up next. It's a 2/1 flyer for 1 and a blue that has instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. For 2 and a blue and a sacrifice Thunderclap Drake, when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. You may choose new targets for the copies. Thunderclap Drake is just a power crept Goblin Electromancer. Goblin Electromancer is a card that people play in almost every Spellslinger deck that fits in the colors. It's a staple that's in 10% of all decks it can be played in. Thunderclap Drake is just an upgrade. It's evasive, it costs fewer colored pips to cast, can fit in decks without red, and they just threw in an ability to copy spells on there as well. This card was cheap monetarily around release and is still pretty low at a little less than $3 at time of writing. This is surprising to me because if this is a card that isn't printed constantly in Commander Precons, I can see this becoming a pretty pricey card. If they print it consistently in all the decks it makes sense in, it could still be a card like 3 Visits that is always being reprinted but maintains a price tag of at least a few dollars just because it's so in demand. Thunderclap Drake is a no-brainer upgrade you could replace Goblin Electromancer with, or more likely play it alongside it in every single Spellslinger deck you build. It's that good. I really don't think Goblin Electromancer needed to get power crept. It's still a very powerful and playable card, but that's what they've been doing lately, power creeping the staples. Anyway, this is a card I would keep an eye on for a good long while to see how its price changes. It's a card I'd recommend buying a copy or two of when it's at an affordable price, because this is a new staple for a very common deck archetype. I don't think I need to tell you the decks it's good in, because it's just good in almost every Spellslinger deck. But it plays great with Calamax the Stormsire with its built-in ability to copy spells. It can be the body to sacrifice with Angelo the Painter, or it can be an evasive creature with prowess in your Narset Enlightened Exile deck. Next up is a much more fringe card called Muckdrub from Planar Chaos. It's a 3/3 beast for 3 and 2 black with flash. When Muckdrub enters the battlefield, change the target of target spell that targets only a single creature to Muckdrub, and it has madness of 2 and a black. If you discard this card, discard it into exile. When you do, cast it for its madness cost or put it into your graveyard. Muckdrub is not a card that I would recommend for a lot of decks, but it is a card that is a good one to keep in the back of your mind for certain situations. It's a worse spellskite, but one that you can surprise your opponents with instead of telegraphing beforehand. It has a similar effect to Mizium Meddler, but is a bit less versatile because it can't change the target of abilities. However, Muckdrub is a fun little card that you can use to protect one of your other important creatures from removal in black, a color that doesn't have tons of options for protection from targeted spells. What's even funner though is that Muckdrub can seal auras from your opponents. If you're playing against an Enchantress deck or a Bogle style deck, Muckdrub can ETB, change the target of the aura your opponent intends to boost their own creature to Muckdrub, and have it attached to it instead. The other player will still control the aura, but that doesn't matter much if it's an Eldrazi conscription or Colossification. Your Muckdrub will be the creature that gets all the benefits. Muckdrub plays well with decks built around other Madness cards like Anya Falconwrath. It naturally synergizes and will untap Anya. It can also play well in other decks that have convenient discard outlets like Chainer and Nightmare Adept. Chainer can discard Muckdrub for free to make it cheaper to cast, and then, when Muckdrub finds its way to the graveyard, can discard a different card to reuse the Muckdrub's ETB effect, even on an opponent's turn since it has flash. Muckdrub can be a good consideration for budget decks, but also Voltron decks like Yargle, Glutton of Urborg, since they require protection from targeted removal the most. The last card to talk about is 5 Alarm Fire from Gatecrash. It's an enchantment that costs 1 and 2 red. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage, put a blaze counter on 5 Alarm Fire. Remove 5 blaze counters from 5 Alarm Fire. It deals 5 damage to any target. This may look like a card that would just be good in limited, but it's astonishing how easy it is to trigger, and the amount of damage it can deal repeatedly in the right situations. If you're in a token deck, getting lots of 1/1s to deal combat damage is absurdly easy, and they just have to deal combat damage, not deal combat damage to a player or anything like that. So if you have 10 1/1 throwaway tokens, and attack with them, and only 3 get through to your opponent, and the rest are blocked, you still get 10 counters on the enchantment, and can deal 10 damage to your opponents, or the creatures that blocked. It can put the person you attack in a lose-lose situation. They're going to be taking a lot of damage either way. Casting an end of turn Secure the Waste, and then attacking with a 5 Alarm Fire out, whether you played it that turn as a surprise or not, can open you up to huge amounts of available burn damage. Something like a Rabble Rousing can dump tons of tokens onto the board and provide a repeatable supply of counters for the enchantment. Even dealing only 5 damage each turn is a substantial amount of burn, and this is all from an enchantment that you only invested 3 mana in. 5 Alarm Fire is in only 1400 decks. I think it should be a lot more. It obviously goes well in Krenko Mob Boss, which spits out overwhelming numbers of tokens with every tap. It can provide a lot of reach in a Jetmir Nexus of Revels deck, which cares about going really wide. Nayali, Sun's Avatar, is another good choice, because it gives the tokens double strike, which means twice the number of counters on your enchantment and twice as much burn damage. If you have a go wide creature deck in red, give it a shot. It's still a super budget card. Thank you for watching, everybody. What do you think about the cards we discussed today? Are these cards diamonds in the rough, or just more rough? Are there any cards you think are hidden gems? Let me know in the comments down below, and give the video a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I will see you next time, and have a great rest of your day.